Hey, welcome to the stream. Today we're going to have a chat about Azure Container Apps and Pulumi, and we'll kind of discuss Azure Container Apps is in preview. It's a brand new Azure service. It basically allows you to run some containers pretty easily. It's built on top of Kubernetes, as I say, but it provides a lot simpler API service for you to work with. Kubernetes is a bit big and unwieldy, and it takes a lot of time to learn it. Once you do, it's very powerful, but maybe you don't need that power. Maybe you just want to get a few containers up and running and connected to the cloud with a TLS certificate, so you have HTTPS. And if that's the case, Azure Container Apps is one way to do it. It also can do microservices. So if you have some, a front-end app and an API and you want them to talk to each other as containers, then this might be a good way to do that for you. It does all of the kind of auto scaling and everything for you. So we're going to have a chat about that. We're also going to have a chat about Pulumi. So Pulumi is a super interesting infrastructure as code tool that can it's the equivalent of Azure ARM templates or Terraform or tools like that, but whereas those tools are declarative, and you'll have seen, if you're using Azure ARM templates, you often it's a kind of a JSON format. You often have to have if statements in there. And whenever you're putting if statements or some sort of code inside a JSON file, you're going to have a bad time. So that sort of declarative style lends itself quite nicely to being, easy to understand. But where you need more power, where you need to do something conditionally, it gets a bit unwieldy. And the same goes for the replacement for ARM templates. I think it's called Bicep, which I haven't used yet. But I understand it's very similar to Terraform. Pulumi, on the other hand, is just code, and it's just you can choose from TypeScript, C#, Python, and I think there was one other language, Rust. So you can choose which language you want, and you're just newing up objects and instantiating them and calling some methods to create your infrastructure in your cloud. So you can create a resource group, you can create an Azure Container App inside there and configure it and all of the rest of it. So we're going to have a look at that too, just because I think it's probably the best way to initialize your infrastructure, and we'll have a look at that. So I have on the screen now Azure Container Apps. You can kind of read the spiel a little bit. It's got auto scaling. You can bring your own container. It's supposed to be simple in theory. We'll see if it really is. It has Envoy, or I've noticed that Americans call it Envoy, as an ingress controller. So that just accepts incoming HTTP requests and then forwards it onto your container as a middleman. The reason for that is just so you can get a TLS certificate, so you can do HTTPS termination. So that's pretty cool. It's also got Dapper. I haven't really looked at Dapper in detail. It's kind of it's some infrastructure that allows you to build microservices a little bit easier and get them talking to each other a little bit easier. It kind of uses a pub sub service mechanism within it, so you can send messages to and from your container from your application to other microservices built with Dapper, and that's how they can communicate with each other. That requires a data store, so often they seem to use Redis, although you can use other data stores, I understand, as well. Built from open source foundation, so it's built on top of Kubernetes and uses Envoy as well, which is it's not Envoy, Envoy, all right, whatever that pronunciation is. And then you've got like some straightforward pricing information and stuff like that. So that's Azure Container Apps. There's also Pulumi. So Pulumi is kind of a developer first infrastructure. So just write some code. You can pick your language and you can pick your CI/CD provider and run your code. This is what it kind of looks like. In this case, I think they're creating an AWS bucket. You're just newing one up, giving it a name, and that's called a stack. And that allows you to, once you execute that code, fire up some infrastructure. So you write your code, you add some your application to it, you write your infrastructure code to new up Azure Container Apps or whatever. Choose the language you want to use, is Go as well. You run your CI/CD and you deploy it. So very easy to do in theory. They had a blog post which I looked at, deploying a new container apps, Azure Container Apps with familiar languages, and they walk you through creating a new container app. So I thought we'd run through this and see how easy it really was. I already logged into Pulumi, and if you go here, it will tell you install Pulumi. That gives you the Pulumi command line, and the next step was to call Pulumi login, which I already did. So there's my Pulumi command that I have now. Once I installed it, I called Pulumi login, and it asks you for an access token. You can get that from your profile settings, I think somewhere. Access tokens, I just created a new one, so you can do the same if you're following along. And once you've done that, I created a new directory and called Pulumi new Azure Container Apps, which is the first step in our project instructions over here, Pulumi new Container Apps. So let's have a look at and see what that has actually created. When I executed that, it asked for me for a project name, description, a stack name, dev I went with, and a default Azure region that you want to deploy to, Northern Europe. And in theory, you can just hit Pulumi up and that will deploy something, but I would rather have a look at the code first. So we'll bring up Visual Studio Code and see what that's done. And in actual fact, it's created a TypeScript project, which is not what I wanted. So let's go back and delete that, because we don't want that. We want the C# project. Let's create a bunch of node modules as well. That's going to take ages to delete. In the meantime, deploy using Pulumi up. Let's go through this. So just talking about what Container Apps is all about, how it's different from Kubernetes service, Azure Container Instances. Azure Container Instances is interesting. It's more for a single container with auto scaling and load balancing and all that. And it's quite expensive, what I've noticed. We should compare the pricing of Azure Container Instances with Container Apps. That would be interesting to have a look at. And setting up an environment. So there is a thing here which on your dashboard tells you make a directory and say Pulumi new Azure C#. So I think I'm going to start with that now that I've deleted that content of my directory, and we'll go with a blank Pulumi project. We'll see what it creates for us. That's our project name, project description, dev, Azure location to use. I want to use North Europe. I'm not sure what the syntax of this is. So it's building a project for us. It's created a project there. Let's see what it's going to do. So it's created a couple of YAML files for us, mystack.cs and a program.cs, and a git ignore. So let's just fire this up in Visual Studio 2022. Preview 1.1 came out this morning, but I thought I'd rather not upgrade just yet. Let's have a look at this. Let's save that so we can save our solution file in the same directory. Discard, save all. Okay, let's have a look at this. So we'll start at the program.cs file, and this is creating a new resource group and a storage account, which is not what we want. And this, I guess this is just a blank sample application. It's nice that it's using the latest C# features here, and my system's using statement went to the bottom, so I'm just going to really quickly change that setting because I think that's really annoying. I always want my system using statements to be at the top. Play system using directives first when sorting usings. I don't know why Visual Studio keeps unsetting that setting for me. It's pretty annoying. And then mystack.cs, program.cs just runs deployment.run async mystack, which looks pretty simple. And this is all happening in the constructor. There's an output of a primary storage key here, and this function over here, what is this doing? It's pulling out some information from Azure. Okay, so that we're going to change that file in a second. Let's look at the pulumi.yaml. That just has our name, our runtime.net, and our description of our app. It's got a C# in there, so I think if it's a YAML file, we need a quote to get the right colorization. And then there's a dev file, config Azure native location North Europe. I don't know if this is the right syntax because it said West US without the space. Maybe the space is not required. We'll find out in a minute. So we don't want to deploy this. Let's go back here to our environment and follow along this tutorial. So first thing we need to do is create a kube environment. Defines a cluster that can host multiple container apps. Behind the scenes, it creates an AKS cluster in a subscription managed internally by Microsoft and deploys the app control plane. Okay, so let's just delete all of that code, or just comment it out because it might be useful to see some of this code. Oh, maybe we can just create a new stack. Let's do that. Add class, and we'll call this container app stack, Azure Container App stack. And what's this done here? That's namespace not going to work, Mr. Visual Studio. And we'll go with a public class, and we'll stick that in the constructor. And in our program, we want to switch to running the Azure Container App stack. And what am I missing? This needs to inherit from stack. And we need to, what's going on here? So let's look at the namespace. They had this namespace over here, but I notice v 2021-0301. So there seems to be lots of different versions of the Azure API that we can target. I guess targeting this version would target the latest. So in our case, we just want the latest, so I'll stick with that. I assume that's the latest. I hope it is. And we'll use Pulumi for the stack, and we'll give this a name. We'll just call it kube environment. Why not? I'm not one for following the instructions or too religiously. So what other arguments can we pass here? We can pass some arguments and some options. We'll have a look at those in a sec. Resource group name, resource group.name. So we don't have a resource group yet. So where did that come from? It looks like they've skipped a step here, but that's okay. We can go back to this stack and I guess copy this line of code to create a resource group. So that's the first step. Resource group equals new resource group, Pulumi.resources, and we'll call this my app. That'll do. And this also has some args you can pass to it, which you should probably always do, and set a location on that. So North Europe. I wish this was an enum. Input string. There's probably some. Is there a like set of constants that provides that? I don't know. Managed by the ID of the resource that manages this resource group. Resource group name, we've already passed that, and tags. You should always have tags. The tags attached to the resource group equals new input map string. Can I just do, what is an input map? See, this is the power that comes with not using a declarative style. You can just go to definition on something and see what something is. So it looks like there's a bunch of implicit operators set up here. So you can just pass in a collection of stuff. So a dictionary of string and something. In our case, dictionary of string would work. What? Dictionary of string. And we should just be using implicit usings. So implicit usings, enable. It looks like it's also set up for Net Core 3.1, which is interesting. I wonder what happens if I just do Net 6.0. Nullable is enabled, which is good. Implicit usings, good. We can get rid of that using statement now. And we'll set some tags up. And the sort of tags you really want to set up that are important are environment. You should probably set up some constants here. So environment name, public, static, class, environment name, and then you're going to probably have const. Where's the, okay, some Pulumi thing is taking over there, but that normally brings up a C# template that creates a constant file. Public string production equals name of, this is my trick to have a string just called production, the same name as this. And we'll go with development as well. For now, we'll just stick with presumably we need a way to pass this in because we want to be able to change this at times. So that's the environment. Environment and environment name dot development for now. And you can have other tags in here as well. I'm not going to add any. So we have our resource group now. We're passing that in. Does not contain a definition for type. So okay, so maybe we do need to use this namespace over here. Pulumi, and get rid of that one. And indeed we do. So this is a later namespace, maybe, than the web one. So that it looks like Pulumi.web is an older, is pointing at an older release, which, yeah, that's not great. Cube environment, I'll type that in. So we have our cube environment now. Let's scroll down. Build and publish a container image. We can build the Docker image and publish it to a new Azure Container Registry. Okay, I don't really have an image that I care to push, and I don't really want to set up an Azure Container Registry right now. So let's have a look at what this code is doing. So this is creating a new registry in our resource group, a basic one, admin user enabled, pulling out the credentials, the admin username and a password. There's our image name. There's our image. We're pointing at an image, and yeah, we don't want to do that. So let's skip that step and scroll ahead to creating a container app. So let's take that code, paste that in here, and see what we get. So we'll fix up some of this. What's going on here? MariaDB. I'm not using MariaDB. What namespaces have I missed? Looks like they haven't specified, so we just have to work it out ourselves. So container app, where does that come from? Come on, Visual Studio. This is in the 2021-0301. So that's the namespace we're using. That seems to be the latest one. So container app, we'll call that container app. And we'll just indent this a little bit nicely. This is in the Azure Native Web namespace. So I'm just gonna grab that text, that namespace from here. We'll just grab that, go in there. Oh, it was there as well. Oh, Visual Studio is a bit slow today with pulling out. We'll stick that using statement here. Dot inputs. There we go. So we're passing in our resource group name, cube environment ID, and we're setting up an ingress. So this is turning on Envoy or Envoy if you're me, and with a target port of 80. And what else is this doing? Registry credentials. So this is turning on, this is allowing a connection to a container registry. We're going to comment that out because we're just going to use Docker Hub just now, and which is public. So I'm assuming that will just work. What is going on here with this? Equals open brackets input list, implicit operators. It can take pretty much anything. So that looks pretty funky. I'm just going to comment the whole of that out. Secret args, so we don't have any secrets either. I'm going to comment that out. And let's just fix up this indentation here. Containers. We're just gonna run this fix up. Come on, come on. This looks, the indentation looks very wrong to me. 2, 3, 4. What is messing up that indentation? I don't really know of any off the top of my head, so I'll just go. Oh yeah, ASP.NET is not on here anymore, is it? I can't remember where the... So this is the runtime. We'll just run this guy, the sample app. And the image is just that. ASP.NET app. Samples, colon that. And the URL. So this is creating an output. And where is it sticking it though? I think it needs something like this guy over here. So if we go here, we'll call this URL. That goes green. Now we have our URL. And the URL is going to look like container app configuration apply ingress apply fqdn fully qualified domain name. So you can pull out the port and things like that from here. I think that's it. And then you just call Pulumi up. It can't be that easy, can it? Truly can't. Let's try it. View live. I wonder what that means. Okay, so you can also watch it on the website. What's the difference between what it's showing there and here? Building authorizer error, obtaining authorization token from Azure CLI, error passing JSON, waiting for the Azure CLI exit status 1. So it looks like I need to log into the Azure CLI. That makes sense, I guess. Sorry, AZ login. So that will close, and that I'm logged in now. So can I just do Pulumi up again? Watch it live. Control click to go to that URL. So we have our stack name. Do you want to perform this update? Details. Okay, it's showing us everything that is going to update. So over here, it's got the stack name. Well, the name of our application, the name of our stack, name of the resource group is going to create, cube environment, and container app. So it tells you everything that it's going to create, including the stack, which is a Pulumi thing. And then it's gonna fire up. This is the resource that it's gonna create with all the information. There's our tags there. Location, Northern Europe. Go for it. See what it's also doing on the website so we can compare and contrast whether it's useful or not. Looks like the website's a bit slower. So creating that failed. App logs configuration must be specified for a managed environment. App logs configuration is invalid. Okay, app logs configuration is invalid. I'm not really sure what that means. So cube environment. So when it's creating the cube environment, that failed. Let's go and check that out. App logs configuration. Something weird is going on with my Visual Studio formatting. Log analytics configuration. Destination. Not really sure what to put here. It's a bit worrying that nothing in the constructor. Maybe I just need to new up something. Let's just try that. And in the meantime, we'll go and look for some. Must be specified for a managed environment. The error is not obvious. Yes, perform the update. Destination is invalid. So we need a destination. Supported values log analytics. Here we go. The error message is actually pretty good. Serves me right for not reading it. Destination equals log analytics. So, okay. Let's try that again. Pulumi up. And at this stage, hopefully we can get this started and talk more about Azure Container Apps and figure out what's going on with it, whether it's great, what the latency is. Looks like we have something. Do you want to perform this update? Yes. We have an output URL. Okay, what's the problem now? Must provide a valid log analytics configuration. Must provide a log analytics configuration. All right. So we also need a log analytics configuration. Where does that go or come from? I have no idea. So it's failing on the cube environment again. Maybe it's this guy that it's complaining about. What does this contain? Customer ID and a shared key. I have no idea what to put in here. Perhaps if we go back to our tutorial, new up this guy, which created a TypeScript version, make directory ts, and we'll run this, and we'll fire up the TypeScript version. Why can't I to dev okay, that's going to run npm install. We'll just open VS Code here. I forgot to install the extension to allow that. Unfortunately, installing dependencies takes such a long time on npm. We're waiting. Come on. Installing dependencies, Northern Europe. Let's go back here. So yeah, we just need to work out how to create a quick cube environment. Let's fire up code and see what they've done here. So, okay, so they've created loads more stuff than we have. Interesting. So we need to create this workspace thing. We'll grab that code and operational insights. Dot workspace. Resource group name, SKU, retention in days. What's it complaining about? Type or namespace workspace could not be found. That should be a var. Var. What's the next error? What is this type? New workspace args. There we go. And resource group name. What's the dot name? It's just converting this from TypeScript. SKU equals new SKU. I think we can just simplify that. I have no idea what we should add here. What's the latest one? 2021. Well, we'll just put inputs for now. And then we'll go name. Equals retention in days equals. Cool, we have our workspace. Now we need to do operational insights dot now we don't know what to do here. Get resource name, get shared keys output. Shared keys out. Well, there's a lot of types in here. Get shared keys. Get shared keys. Invoke async. What goes in here? Get shared keys args. Name, change that to name, equals. That should be all right, shouldn't it? Cannot convert Pulumi output string to string. Can I cast it? No. The output type doesn't have an implicit conversion on it. Possible null reference assignment. We'll just put the bang operator in there to make sure. No. All right, we'll just leave it. Workspace, shared keys. So then what happens next? Destination log analytics. Customer ID is this and that is this. The location is also set. We need to do that. So let's go over here. So they're setting the customer ID here. Shared key. Kind of TypeScript looks like C# if you squint a little bit. Dot apply. What is this type? Oh, it's an await. I have to await it. Ooh, what happens if this is a constructor, so I can't await this? How does that work? What do I do here? Can I override something? Nope. All right, we'll just call getAwaiter.getResult for now. So here we have our shared keys dot primary shared key. Okay, and then we also needed to specify our location here, and that just goes like that. What else have they done? So they're setting up their container registry. We don't need to do that because we skipped that step. And their image. And then in their container app, they also set the location. So you need to set the location everywhere, which is interesting. Ingress, that's about it really. Nothing any more complicated than what we're doing already. And yep. So let's run Pulumi up again. Let's go back to the previous directory. Pulumi up. Let's do it. It's gonna tell us that it's changed some resources, so we will see what it says about that. We should also tag our resources. So we have tags here in our resource group, but we should also tag individual resources also. So I don't know. Tags, here we go. That's just good practice. Can I do that? I can. So that will, I presume, work in the next Pulumi up. Exception has been thrown. Wow, that's a funky error. Operational insights get shared keys returned an error, failed. Return error 404, resource group not found. Pulumi, something could not be found. So it looks like it can't find our shared key thing over here. Shared keys invoke async did not work. Get shared keys results. Is that what that type is? Yes, that is. Get shared keys. Invoke async. Oh, you can invoke it. All right, let's do that. So you don't have to go get await.get result. This is a blocking call, so you probably shouldn't do this for real. There must be a way you can get shared keys, invoke args. And that produces a result. And this apply. So how did that work? It had the apply over here as well. Where did it go? Apply, and it was just a function call. Primary shared key. So if we try to run that again, will we get anywhere? Just stick that in the corner. Let's have a look. How are we doing for time? 50 minutes into the stream. Nope. Get shared keys returned an error, request failed. Microsoft Operational Insights workspaces. Service returned an error, 404. Resource group not found. So okay, why is it complaining about that? So let's think about this for a minute. Resource group. Are we setting the resource group correctly on all three items that we're creating? So resource group name equals that. I don't know why. Maybe that's causing the issue. Oh, that seems to work now. That was weird. That's probably what the issue was. Let's see. So this is creating a log analytics workspace and sticking it in our cube environment. And look, it's working. 3 created. Do you want to perform this update? Yes. Completed with success. Oh, it's creating the log analytics workspace. Is that going to work? In theory, we should be able to see this in our Azure subscription as well. So I just have a blank subscription here. And if I new this up, if I just refresh this, we should see some resource groups and things appear. Or maybe it's too early. Still creating the log analytics workspace. This is where all the logs for our containers will go by default. Here we go. We have my app and then some random string at the end that contains a log analytics workspace. Now it's creating the kube environment. Let's refresh that. Whoops. Refresh. Has that not created? Oh, it's failed. Kube environment was created. Container app failed. Invalid container app name. A name must consist of lowercase alphanumeric characters. Fair enough. Let's do that. Let's go here. Container app. Lowercase or dashes. So Pulumi up. Getting used to calling this now. We're almost there. Yes, perform this update. There must be an argument you can pass to Pulumi up to just say yes by default. I'm going to look for that next. Seems like an obvious thing to want to do. So it's creating the container app now. If we go back to Azure and refresh, we should see it pop up, hopefully. Yep, there's our kube environment. And you can see that Pulumi automatically appends some random text at the end to ensure that you don't get any duplicates or anything like that. And you can create multiple instances. Okay, so that's done. Let's refresh. And there's our container app. Cool. And if we have our output, we can control click that, and there we go. Welcome to .NET. Awesome. That's awesome. So let's have a look at this now. So in our subscription, if we go to our kube environment, let's have a look around here. Not much information here. There's our tag that we created. Apps, no apps, app service plans, no results here. Not really sure what to expect to see here. Okay, so that wasn't very exciting or interesting. And then this is what the equivalent ARM template to create that, just the kube environment would look like. Absolutely crazy. I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. Let's have a look at the container app. Let's look at, there's our tag again. Secrets, we don't have any secrets for our container. Ingress is enabled, we enabled that. External traffic is allowed. Targeting port 80, that looks like what we created. Continuous deployment. What did we do here? We didn't connect up a registry, so that's all fine. And here is our container app. Here's our container. It currently is receiving 100% of traffic. So you can set it to receive less traffic if you want. So if we go into it, this is our container. There's our URL. Where's our container image? Resource group subscription. There's our container. CPU, memory. Let's configure that. So let's go back to our template and see what other arguments we can pass here. Args to the container, command, environment, variables, container resource args equals new container resource args. CPU equals, how much did we give? 0.5 CPU and 1 GB of memory. Let's give it one CPU and memory of, so we can do 1024. Let's give it 512 MB of memory. We don't need as much as a gig. It's just a blank app. So that's how you set that. So let's do Pulumi up, make sure that changes. Let's also call -- help and figure out what we can pass to just say yes, run it. Pulumi up, message, optional message to associate with the update operation. Wow, we should always set that. Parallel, allow, debug. So you can do a diff, which is nice. Parallel, allow P resources operations to run in parallel at once. One for no parallels, defaults to unbounded, so it creates lots of resources in parallel, which is good. Secret, show config, show reads, suppress outputs, target, yes, -- yes. So you always want to set a -- message and a -- yes, and the message is just going to be increase CPU, decrease memory. Okay, did it that time. I wonder where that message goes. So that message must go into the Pulumi website somewhere. If I go to my profile settings on my dashboard, we have latest stack updates and activity. There we go, there's our message. We should always set that. That makes total sense. Container with app name has invalid memory resource request. 512, the memory field for each container if provided must contain a decimal value of no more than 2 decimal places followed by GI to denote gigabytes. Okay, so it doesn't accept MB. 0.5 GI. Let's try that. Oh, the message was wrong. So there's the danger there. Make sure your message is correct. Did our URL change? No, it didn't. The host name did change though. CPU memory usage, memory limit is a gig. That's not right. We chose something else. Oh, it didn't work. Total CPU and memory for all containers defined in a container must add up to one of the following CPU memory combinations. Ah, okay. So you can't just choose how much CPU and memory you want. You have to choose one of the combinations. So let's go 0.25, the smallest amount of CPU, and 0.5 gig of memory, and run that again. Decrease CPU, decrease memory. Now that I've created this Pulumi stack, I can easily spin up many more container environments. Maybe I also want to spin up something in Western Europe or Western US or some other location. I can now do that quite easily. So that's the advantage here. I can stick a for loop around this whole thing and just say, you know, iterate over a collection and say I want to create this one. One set for Northern Europe, one set for Western Europe, and so on and so forth. And that's just a for loop. So that's the power here with Pulumi and using code as opposed to a declarative format. We're specifying a for loop in ARM templates or some other format like Bicep or Terraform is not that easy or not that easy to understand or cool. We've got that updated now. So if we go back to our container, refresh that, now we have 512 megabytes of memory and CPU core. It still says 1 CPU core, but you can't have 0.25 CPU cores, so that's gonna default to 1. That still works. So let's have a look at our should I split this into the next stream? I think so. It's 11 o'clock. Let's split this off into another stream, and we'll carry on in the next stream and look at what the performance is like of our Azure Container App. What's the latency like? How long does it take to scale up and down? Right now our scale is set to what exactly? Minim replicas 0, max of 10. Use scale rules to determine the type of events that trigger scaling. There are no scaling rules defined for this revision. So it looks like we can set some scaling rules for this container. I don't know what level you set that at. Not that level. Scale. New scale args. Min replicas equals 1. Max replicas equals 10. Rules equals new scale rules. That's a list. Azure queue. Okay, so you can specify whether you want to scale up based on items appearing in an Azure queue, HTTP requests. So we can scale up using HTTP requests in our case. New HTTP scale rule args. Authentication secrets for the custom scale rule. Metadata. Properties for the scale rule. No idea what you put in there. Name. Scale. Let's see if that works. Add scale rule. Pulumi's now gonna go and compare what it knows with what's in Azure and figure out what the differences are, and then update our container app. 1 to update, and now it's going to update the container app. 4 left unchanged. Update failed. Okay, let's look. Property rules.name has an invalid value. HTTP scale. A value must contain lower alphanumeric characters. HTTP scale. I'm getting the message here. Lowercase characters. Azure is really inconsistent with its naming rules. So some places want lowercase, some places uppercase is okay, some places dashes are okay, some places not. I think I'm going to stick with lower kebab case going forward. The HTTP scale rule must have a non-empty metadata collection. So I'm not really sure what to put in there. At this point, what I'd probably do is create a new container in here and then see what the Azure ARM template creates, and then see if I can replicate that in Pulumi. But we'll leave that for next stream. So this stream we looked at how we can fire up an Azure Container App using Pulumi and what Azure Container Apps briefly can do. Next stream we'll focus more on Azure Container Apps and see if we can look at some of the latency and the traffic, splitting traffic across containers and things like that. So thanks everyone for watching, and goodbye.